Hey guys, tonight we journey far back, farther than Rome, Greece, or even the medieval castles you've tiptoed through in your dreams. Tonight we trudge through the blistering sands of ancient Egypt. But don't pack sunscreen just yet. The sky burns down with an unrelenting white fury. The sand reflects it straight into your eyes. And the smell of humanity without plumbing cologne or a change of clothes. You're sweating already. Good, because you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me, where are you listening from, and what time is it for you right now? Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You open your eyes, and the heat hits you like a wave. Not just warmth, this is a wet towel slapped across your face in a sauna kind of hot. The desert sun is already halfway up the sky, radiating over the limestone cliffs and yawning over the golden spine of the Nile. The locals don't seem to notice. They move with slow grace, linen tunics, fluttering just enough to pretend there's a breeze. You, however, are drenched in sweat within minutes. Your armpits feel like soup, and your back is a slip and slide of regret. You reach up to wipe your forehead, and oh, that's weird, it feels gritty. That's not just sweat. That's sand. Always sand. In your mouth, your ears, every crevice. You adjust your kilt, it's itchy and thin, doing nothing to protect you from the heat or preserve your dignity. Linen might be breathable, but not when you're melting. Now here's the kicker, no deodorant. The Egyptians, gods bless them, did try. They mashed fragrant oils and crushed lotus petals into sticky salves, but you, a visitor with a 21st century nose, are not prepared. Everyone smells like sun-baked onions, sour milk, and something vaguely ceremonial. It's the kind of odor that lingers in your nostrils and follows you like a ghost. No escape. One of the most famous Egyptian perfumes was called kaifi, a mixture of honey wine, cinnamon, and myrrh. Sounds nice, right? Except it was mainly reserved for temples and mummification rituals. Not for your average sweaty peasant trudging behind a donkey. You spot a shady corner finally, a palm tree arching over a tiny mud brick house. You hurry toward it, hopeful for a breeze. And that's when it hits. The air smells worse in the shade. There's rot here. Not dead body rot, but just living without refrigeration rot. That fish someone left drying in the sun, it turned the corner into a crime scene. You gulp and try to act casual, like you weren't just dry heaving behind a clay jug. Let's not forget, ancient Egypt wasn't all gold and glamour. For most people, it was survival mode. Farmers, laborers, servants. They toiled in the fields from dawn until dusk, soaked in sweat, caked in mud, and lucky if they got to bathe once a week, assuming the local canal hadn't become a mosquito hatchery. Speaking of bathing, you're probably wondering, why not just shower, sweet summer child? Showers don't exist. If you're lucky, you get to splash Nile water on yourself or sit in a public basin. But even that depends on your status. And the rich. They had slaves do the splashing. For everyone else, you used oils to cleanse your body, then scraped off the gunk with bronze tools. Imagine exfoliating with a butter knife while your dog licks its own feet nearby. Ancient spa day, not quite. Historians still argue whether the average Egyptian truly suffered this much, or if we're projecting modern discomforts backward. But one thing's clear, the sun was merciless, and there was no SPF 50 in sight. The locals applied a paste of rice, bran, and clay, sometimes even crocodile dung, to protect themselves from sunburn. That's right. Crocodile dung. Slather it on and try not to inhale. No wonder everyone stayed thin, just getting dressed was traumatic. There's a story of Pharaoh Akhenaten, the so-called heretic king who worshipped the sun god Aten. He would stand out in the open for hours, bare-chested arms raised basking like a lizard. Maybe divine radiance gave him a tan, but you're just turning pink, then red, then sorry. And if the heat doesn't get you, the clothing will. Your modern body isn't used to rough linen. There's no moisture wicking, no cooling tech. Just scratchy, sand-filled sheets draped awkwardly around your sweaty limbs. Try running in that, or sitting, or moving in any direction without flashing someone. The irony: Egyptians valued cleanliness. Personal hygiene was practically a religious duty, but clean is a relative concept when the only soap you have is animal fat and lye, and your sponge is a handful of reeds. Still, they tried. Morning routines included applying eye makeup, yes, even the men oiling their scalps, and maybe chewing a sprig of mint. To balance out the fish breath. Fun fact, they used burnt frankincense as a kind of proto-deodorant. Charcoal paste under the pits. Bold move, especially when combined with heat rash and pit hair long enough to braid. By noon, you're dreaming of a bottle of Gatorade, a fan, and the sweet, sweet hum of an air conditioner. Instead, you've got a pottery jug filled with warm, possibly fermented water and a breeze that smells like dung. You sip cautiously and spit. Because it's not water, it's beer. Cloudy, chunky, half-flat beer that tastes like someone boiled a sandwich. Your skin is peeling already. Your lips are cracked. The sun has stolen the moisture from your soul. And worst of all, you've only been here a day. One day. And yet, as you sit back on a stone bench, rubbing your sore feet and swatting a fly off your eyebrow, you see a child run past laughing. You hear the soft rustle of palm trees and distant flute music. For a moment, the harshness fades, and you glimpse the strange serenity of the Nile world. But then, a camel snorts at you, and it's back to reality. Welcome to ancient Egypt, and good luck making it past tomorrow. You wake up still sweating. There's no cool down overnight, no crisp breeze to soothe your scorched skin. Just more heat, thick and swampy, seeping up from the cracked earth and clinging to the linen wrapped awkwardly around your limbs. You stagger toward the riverbank, your tongue sandpaper dry, hoping the Nile will be your salvation. Spoiler, it won't. The Nile glistens under the early sun, deceptively serene. A lifeline for all of Egypt, yes, but also the ancient equivalent of a public swimming pool septic tank, dishwashing station, sacred temple basin, and crocodile jacuzzi. You kneel to drink, hoping the moving current means cleaner water. It doesn't. The moment the liquid touches your lips, you realize something's wrong. It smells green, like something left out in a bucket for too long. You hesitate, but you're desperate, so you drink. Big mistake. Your stomach churns almost immediately. Maybe it's bilharzia, thanks to tiny parasitic worms that sneak into your body through skin or mouth. Or maybe it's just yesterday's fish cleaned upstream and tossed back in with a side of duck droppings. Either way, you're feeling off. Welcome to your first lesson in ancient water filtration. There wasn't any. Mainstream historians agree that Nile water, though essential, carried health risks. It was the highway of life and the garbage chute of civilization. People bathed in it, had washed clothes in it, sacrificed in it. And yes, urinated in it too. But it gets worse sometimes. People would relieve themselves directly from the banks or boats. You might think you're just kneeling beside a scenic river. In reality, you're drinking history's oldest shared toilet. As you stagger away, nauseous and vaguely betrayed by nature, you begin looking for another sort of relief. You need a bathroom, right now. But here's the fun twist. There are no real toilets. For the average Egyptian bathroom meant a hole in the ground behind your house, or a quick squat in the fields preferably before sunrise, so no one walks by with a basket of figs. If you're upper class, congratulations, you get a ceramic seat placed over a sand-filled pot. Hope you like changing the litter box because you are the cat now. Don't ask about toilet paper, it doesn't exist. Instead, smooth pebbles, crushed pottery shards, or a wet rag might do the trick. And remember, cleanliness was important, so you'll need to wash up. With what you ask, with that same lovely Nile water you just drank. Circle of life. Quirky historical tidbit in some wealthier households. There were servants called toilet attendants. Their job, dispose of the contents and keep the area fresh. So if you're feeling particularly royal today, just imagine asking someone to carry out your pot and pretend it's incense. Your stomach's still twisting and your confidence in this civilization is draining faster than your electrolytes. You hobble toward a shaded alley and sit on a pile of what you hope is just discarded straw. You think about modern plumbing, about air freshener commercials, about the silent dignity of a private bathroom with a locking door. None of that exists here. Privacy isn't exactly a concept in ancient Egypt. The walls are thin and the air is thick, and the sound of someone retching is never too far. Suddenly, a young woman passes by carrying a ceramic jar on her head. She nods politely, and you notice something odd. She's wearing a thick cone of what looks like wax on her head. Turns out it's perfume wax. People wore these cones to slowly melt in the heat, releasing pleasant scents throughout the day. Ingenious, sure, but also a bit gross once it's halfway down your back in the midday sun. Historians still argue whether these cones were used daily or just for ceremonial occasions, but the concept alone says a lot. If your hygiene plan relies on wax melting into your hair, you might be compensating for a much larger issue. Back to your gastrointestinal dilemma, here's a reality you didn't expect. Food and water in ancient Egypt were almost guaranteed to give you trouble. In fact, archaeologists have found parasites in preserved Egyptian mummies. Their digestive tracts, lovingly wrapped for eternity, often tell tales of dysentery roundworms and liver flukes. Comforting, isn't it? You try to distract yourself with the view. There's the Nile, a glittering snake through the land, sacred and treacherous, all at once. Boats drift lazily, papyrus reeds waving at their passing. You hear laughter. Children playing in the shallows, splashing water on each other, maybe daring one another to jump in deeper. You smile until someone screams and everyone scatters. That's when you see it, 2 eyes and a snout gliding silently beneath the surface. A Nile crocodile. They say the Nile belongs to the gods, but the crocodiles didn't get the memo. These aren't the cute cartoon crocs from kids' books. They're massive, armored, and terrifying. Ancient Egyptians both feared and worshipped them. The god Sobek had a crocodile head, and temples were dedicated to his honor. Some were even built near crocodile-infested waters to offer daily sacrifices. You'd think worshipping the thing might keep it away. Nope, that's just a formality. You back away slowly, gripping your side, still queasy. You'd hope the river would refresh you. Instead, it's introduced you to a delightful buffet of ancient bacterial roulette, unpredictable wildlife, and public bathroom anxiety. Not a great morning, all things considered. By the time you reach the village edge, you're exhausted. Every step feels like dragging a bag of wet laundry uphill. Your mouth tastes like regret, and you're pretty sure your stomach is staging a rebellion. A group of laborers pass you, arms full of baskets and stone tools already sweating through their tunics. One of them waves a casual hello. You nod, trying to seem normal, but inside you're crying. They make it look easy. You're barely holding it together. Remember that Nile water? Yeah. Still sloshing around your insides like a cursed potion. And the worst part, there's no Imodium. No bottled water. Just you a latrine pit you'd rather not describe in the never-ending heat. You sigh and keep walking, wishing you'd never taken that sip. Just one day in Egypt, and the river has already tried to baptize you, poison you, and possibly feed you to a reptile. But hey, you're still alive. For now, night finally falls, and you might think just for a second that you've made it. The sun dips below the horizon in a fiery blur, casting long shadows over mud-brick walls and the winding banks of the Nile. The air cools ever so slightly, just enough to imagine that sleep might be possible. But as you lie back exhausted, itchy, and still recovering from your romantic encounter with Nile water, a new nightmare emerges in sex. You thought the sun was your worst enemy. Wrong. That honor now belongs to things with wings and more legs than you can count. The first sign is a soft, high-pitched whine. A mosquito, probably. Then another. Then a whole choir. You swat at your arms, your neck, your ankles too late. They've already feasted. Your skin becomes a mosaic of red welts, and you realize why so many ancient texts describe magical remedies for itching. Sleep. That's just wishful thinking now. Ancient Egyptians knew this pain well. Mainstream history records how they would slather themselves in thick scented oils to ward off insects or burn incense made from myrrh and juniper to create a protective cloud. That is, if they could afford it. You, on the other hand, have nothing but your fraying nerves and a leaf you tried to wave around like a fan. You may as well hang a buffet open sign on your forehead. And it's not just mosquitoes. Sand fleas lurk in bedding and clothing, so those mysterious little bites on your thighs. Not a coincidence. Lice crawl behind ears and into hairlines. And don't even get started on bed bugs. You shift your weight, trying not to scratch, but your whole body tingles with the unshakable sensation that something is crawling on you. Because, well, something probably is. You sit up desperate for relief. Maybe fresh air will help. You step outside and immediately regret it. A swarm of gnats flies straight into your eyes and nostrils. You cough, wave your arms, and walk blindly through the narrow alleys of the village, guided only by the distant flicker of an oil lamp and your increasingly fragile will to live. That's when you meet the friendliest neighborhood plague, the humble fly. Egyptians even deified these persistent pests, sort of. Pharaohs were known to award golden fly pendants to soldiers for bravery. Why? Because enduring a battlefield full of flies was considered a major act of valor. Makes sense now, doesn't it? You stop beside a house breathing heavily, skin hot from bites and irritation, only to realize your nose is bleeding. Great. And what caused that? You've just joined the proud club of people suffering from schistosomiasis, thanks again to our lovely friend the Nile. The disease causes internal bleeding urinary infections, and in rare cases, neurological issues. But on the bright side, at least, you're still upright. Sort of. Quirky side note, the ancient Egyptians believed garlic was a magical protector against all sorts of illnesses and even evil spirits. You try chewing on a clove. It helps? Not at all. Your breath now smells like a forgotten salad, and the mosquitoes seem to like it even more. A local boy laughs at you. You try to wave but end up scratching your arm again. Historians still argue whether the ancient people suffered from all the diseases we assume based on the mummies we dig up, or if our modern obsession with pathology overstates their misery. But standing here scratching through layers of sweat and insect bites, you're starting to feel like a pretty solid data point. By midnight, you've taken refuge in a small storage hut. It smells like straw mold and something dead that once dreamed of being a fig. You curl up on the floor, hoping for a moment's peace, when something slithers across your hand. You bolt upright, heart hammering. A lizard, a snake, a nightmare. It's probably a gecko, maybe harmless, but your nerves are fried. Your skin itches like you rolled in stinging nettles. You haven't really slept. The floor is hard, your stomach's still angry, and you haven't gone a full hour without being bitten by something. You think about mosquito nets, about bug spray, about antiseptic creams and antihistamines and ice packs. None of that exists here. In ancient Egypt, suffering is part of life. Insects were everywhere, and people coped with them the same way they coped with the sun and the water and the labor, by enduring. Or dying. No pressure. Another strange detail floats into your mind, something you overheard earlier. A priest muttering a protective charm for a child. Something about warding off the bite of invisible mouths. Even thousands of years ago, the buzz of wings at night was a universal dread. And unlike the gods, mosquitoes don't accept offerings. You try to count your breaths, hoping for sleep. Inhale, exhale, swat, scratch, repeat. A camel moans somewhere nearby. A frog croaks. You hear the slap of bare feet in the distance. The Nile ripples in the moonlight. It's beautiful in its own eerie way. But beauty doesn't make it comfortable. And comfort doesn't exist in your current coordinates. Eventually, your body forces rest on you. Not real sleep, but a haze of discomfort and exhaustion. You drift in and out, half dreaming of cool showers and sterile sheets, only to jolt awake each time something crawls too close. Your muscles ache. Your skin is raw. You are exactly 1 day and 1 night into ancient Egypt, and your survival rating is not great. You were warned, but there's something oddly enchanting about it too, isn't there? The stars above are breathtaking, untamed, and ancient. The air even sticky with heat, and life is pure in its own primitive way. And somewhere a temple drum beats slowly into the night. You close your eyes, letting the sound pull you in. Just don't forget to check your shoes before you put them on tomorrow. Morning, again. Your joints pop like old furniture as you sit up, scratching a constellation of red welts across your limb. You didn't sleep so much as survive the dark. The hut you spent the night in now smells like a compost pile baking in an oven. Outside, the air is already heating up thick with the scent of earth sweat and freshly pounded grain. Time to work. You need food, shelter, some kind of income. It's the 4th sunrise of your new ancient life, and freeloading isn't an option. So you ask around, and the options present themselves with chilling clarity. You can either break your body as a manual laborer or break your spirit as a scribe. There is no middle ground. Both jobs will destroy you, just in different fonts. First, you try the fields. A group of men, weathered and muscled, are already waist-deep in muddy irrigation canals, hauling baskets of silt to fertilize crops. The smell is unholy. The canal water mixes with animal dung and decaying plant matter, all simmering under the sun. A supervisor shouts at you, motioning to grab a hoe. You do. It's heavier than expected, your soft, modern hands blistering after 10 minutes. You spend the morning digging. The soil is stubborn. The sun is brutal. By mid-morning, your back is screaming, your shoulders feel like they've been pickled. And you have a sudden, profound respect for every farmer who ever lived. You take a break by a sycamore tree, but only for a breath, before someone shouts at you again. Laborers in ancient Egypt built everything. Not just pyramids, but roads, canals, temples, even tombs. And they worked year-round, not just during the flood season. Contrary to popular belief, most weren't slaves. They were conscripted citizens, part of a labor tax. You worked for the pharaoh, and in return you got food, housing, and maybe some beer. You're already nostalgic for the Nile beer you spat out earlier. By midday, you've sweated through your linen wrap and into a state of pure, noodle-limbed fatigue. You can't swing the hoe anymore. The other workers look at you with a mix of pity and disdain. You are a soft, squishy novelty from the future, and they're betting you won't last a week. So you quit. Not nobly. You collapse into a pile of straw and moan something about your lumbar region. When you finally crawl away, a farmer kindly hands you a palmful of dried dates. You thank him between wheezes. Next, you try a different path, a quieter one. A young man in a white linen tunic offers you a seat beside him under a shaded canopy. He dips a reed pen into black ink and continues copying lines of hieroglyphs onto a papyrus scroll with careful precision. Scribes, he tells you, don't carry bricks. We carry knowledge. Sounds appealing until you realize your job will be memorizing hundreds of symbols, mastering grammar rules that rival legalese, and sitting hunched over in the sun for hours, if not days. Your vision already blurs from dehydration and insect bites. Now add squinting at tiny owl and beetle shapes on crinkly parchment for 10 hours a day, with a teacher who occasionally smacks your fingers with a stick. Mainstream historians regard scribes as elite and respected. And they were sort of. But elite in a pyramid scheme still means stress eye strain and the eternal ache of writer's cramp. You're not writing poems, by the way. You're copying taxes, census logs, crop tallies, obituaries. Fun, quirky tidbit scribes often trained from childhood. One text, The Satire of the Trades, was basically ancient propaganda praising the scribe's life, while mocking every other job. Be a scribe, it says, and you won't smell like fish guts. Tempting logic, but also you'll probably develop scoliosis by 30. You try copying a few lines. Your first mistake, using too much ink. The second, smudging it with your forearm. By the third mistake, the teacher sighs deeply and suggests you might be better suited for physical tasks. You leave with sore eyes, ink-stained fingers, and a growing suspicion that you might not be cut out for anything. Historians still argue whether literacy was more widespread than we think. Some say many Egyptians could read basic hieroglyphs. Others argue it was tightly controlled, with scribes forming a powerful bureaucratic class. Either way, one thing's certain: you're not joining them today. You shuffle down a dusty street past homes with cracked walls and people hawking everything from clay jars to roasted locusts. You're not sure if it's the exhaustion or the sunstroke, but the whole city seems to shimmer like it's floating just above the earth. You pass a tax collector loudly berating a woman over barley she can't pay. You pass a priest chanting under his breath while pouring oil over a carved ibis. You pass a boy dragging a headless chicken. And then you pass a stone monument, a stela, engraved with neat columns of script. You recognize maybe two symbols, one for sun and one that probably means king. The rest is lost to you. You stand there feeling the full weight of your ignorance. You're too weak for the fields, too slow for the ink, too foreign for anything else. You finally sit near the edge of a temple courtyard, watching scribes hurry by in white robes, their sandals clicking scrolls under their arms. They don't see you. Or if they do, they don't stop. You think about modern offices, coffee breaks, ergonomic chairs, keyboards. You would kill for a keyboard. Your career options in ancient Egypt, not looking good. Unless you find a wealthy patron, marry into a powerful family, or suddenly develop god-tier stone carving skills, you're either writing in heat stroke or hauling bricks until your spine gives out. You slump against a wall and laugh dry and raspy. Someone offers you a sip of water. You hesitate. It's Nile water again. But honestly, at this point you'll take your chances. You wake the next morning hoping desperately that anything has improved. Your hands are blistered, your shoulders are still locked in a shrug of defeat, and the bite on your ankle now looks like it's auditioning for a horror story. You sit up and think maybe you can at least clean yourself up, regain some dignity. A bath, a haircut, a quick scroll through Instagram. Wait, no. Not here. This is ancient Egypt, where self-care means tweezers, coal, and crocodile dung. Let's start with your appearance. You haven't seen a mirror in days. There's no reflective glass, no camera lens to remind you what you look like. Just a polished piece of bronze hanging in the corner of a weaver's stall. You lean over it and, oh dear. You're sunburned, puffed from heat retention, and somehow both shiny and crusty at once. Your hair tangled and coated in dust looks like it's trying to escape your scalp. The dark smudges under your eyes make you look like an exhausted raccoon. Here's the thing. Ancient Egyptians were obsessed with appearance, not just the elite everyone. You weren't just expected to be clean. You were expected to be polished, perfumed, and painted. And yes, this includes men. Every morning was a beauty ritual. You'd start by shaving or plucking your body hair. All of it. Legs, arms, head gone. Bald was beautiful and wigs were the fashion. You, in contrast, look like a scarecrow that's been through a sandstorm. You try shaving with a copper razor offered by a friendly merchant. Within seconds, you nick yourself. Then again. And again. Blood mixes with sweat and runs down your neck. The blade is dull, the handle sticky, and the experience somewhere between a home dentistry experiment and medieval torture. You remember reading once that high-status Egyptians even had professional barbers. Right now, you'd give a whole sack of barley just to have someone hold the razor properly. Then there's makeup. Yes, you heard right. Kohl eyeliner. You see a man outside a temple lining his eyes in thick black strokes. Not just fashion, it's practical too. It helps reduce glare from the sun and, according to the ancients, wards off evil spirits. You find a small pot of the stuff and try applying it. Immediately, your eyes water. You blink wildly, causing the line to smudge into a look that says, haunted tomb escapee. Mainstream scholars confirm that both men and women wore cosmetics daily. Eyes, cheeks, even lips. Malachite for green tones. Red ochre for blush. Lip color, crushed beetle shells. You sit there half made up with one eye twitching and the other looking like it's mid-exorcism, wondering how they did this every single day without YouTube tutorials. But hey, it gets better or weirder. Let's talk deodorant. We already discussed the charcoal method, but here's a fun fringe tidbit: crocodile dung. Yes, really. Mixed with oils and herbs, it was applied not only for sun protection, but also some sources claim as a body treatment. You sniff yourself. You already smell like a forgotten onion, so you figure why not spoiler? It's exactly as horrifying as you imagined. The paste dries into flakes that crack and fall into your sandals. People nearby start stepping away. You do, however, stop sweating. Not because it worked, because you're too embarrassed to move. Hair removal, a whole other adventure. Tweezers made of bronze. Sugaring paste made of honey and lemon heated over a flame. You give it a try. You last 2 strips. The scream you release echoes off stone walls. Someone claps from inside a house, either impressed or alarmed. Historians still argue whether these extreme beauty routines were truly daily habits or ceremonial indulgences. But given the artistic depictions in tombs, it's clear that grooming was a cultural priority. Cleanliness equaled piety. Appearance wasn't vanity, it was your social currency. You at the moment are bankrupt. And now the cherry on this chaos cake, you've been invited to a local feast. A rare break. You clean up as best you can, apply more coal, and don a slightly less stained linen wrap. The host greets you at the door of a spacious home, waving you inside, where low tables hold baskets of dates, grilled fish figs, and bowls of sour wine. You're seated beside a priest, who smells like incense and judgment. Music begins, flutes, tambourines, the soft clap of dancers' hands. You try to relax. But just as you're lifting a bite of honeyed bread, a young woman sitting nearby leans in and says in a perfectly casual tone, "Your aura looks dry." You blink. Is that a compliment? Then she hands you a small clay vial. You open it, frankincense and goose fat. For your face, she says, deadpan. Apparently, you've been given the ancient equivalent of moisturizer. You dab it on, realizing your skin really is cracking from the sun. It feels nice. Greasy, but nice. You smile, she does not smile back, and suddenly you're reminded you're still very much a foreigner here. Later, as you stumble back toward your hut, feet dusty and lips sticky with date syrup, you feel both a bit ridiculous and a little more human. Grooming in ancient Egypt isn't about vanity. It's about surviving the judgment of the gods, your neighbors, and your own reflection. Still, as you wash off the eyeliner with a handful of tepid water and shake the crocodile dung flakes out of your tunic, you can't help but mutter, "Just give me my shampoo back." Your stomach growls before the sun even rises. Not the casual hunger of skipping breakfast. This is a hollow, primal groan, the sound your insides make when they realize dinner was a handful of dates and a questionable sip of Nile beer. You sit up, your mouth dry, your breath thick with morning funk, and maybe a lingering trace of goose fat. Time to hunt for food. Which in ancient Egypt doesn't mean spears or stalking prey, it means bartering, hoping, and praying. Your next meal doesn't double as a death sentence. You head toward the market, the streets already busy with vendors shouting out the virtues of their wares. Fresh fish, one cries. Still wriggling. You make eye contact with the fish. It does indeed twitch. Another stall is stacked with loaves of bread, thick, uneven, and slightly gray. You pick one up, squeeze it. It crumbles in your hand like sand-filled chalk. A woman slaps your wrist and yells something about paying first. You apologize, though she clearly doesn't care. Bread is the staple of Egyptian diets. In fact, some say they invented it. But don't get dreamy about golden crusts and soft centers. The grain was ground with stone, often leaving bits of grit in the flour. Over time, this wore down people's teeth so badly that even young adults had the molars of someone triple their age. So, congratulations. Every bite is basically a dental sacrifice. You take a cautious nibble. It's dense, sour, and dry, like chewing on a sun-baked sponge. But it fills your stomach, mostly with dread. Mainstream history praises Egyptian bread and beer as sustaining the masses. And it did. Barely. Alongside lentils, onions, leeks, and the occasional fish, this was the average meal. Not glamorous, not terrible, until it wasn't. Food spoilage was common, especially in the relentless heat. One wrong loaf, and you'd be doubled over in an alley cursing Ra and every grain God ever imagined. You wander farther in and find a man selling meat. That is, he's fanning flies off what might once have been goat. The stench suggests it's recently crossed the line from food to science project. Still, he beckons you forward. You decline, quickly. Instead, your eye catches something sizzling over a small fire. Skewers of locusts, crispy, spiced, and honestly kind of tempting. You've read that insects were a protein source in many ancient cultures, and suddenly your Western palate feels like an unnecessary luxury. You take a bite. Crunchy, smoky, not awful. You close your eyes and pretend it's popcorn. Popcorn with legs. Quirky fact for your trouble, some nobles were buried with jars of preserved food, including whole geese cakes and wine for their afterlife snacking. Which suggests even they didn't fully trust the food supply here. Can't say you blame them. You You sit down near a granary trying to savor your buggy breakfast when a priest approaches. He offers you a sip from a clay cup. You accept, then immediately regret it. It's beer, again. Thick, yeasty, and vaguely sour. Beer in ancient Egypt was more like a slurry full of grain particles and cloudy with fermentation. They drank it for calories more than flavor. You try to smile, but it comes out as a gag. The priest nods solemnly, as if you've passed some unspoken test. You remember how beer and bread were considered divine gifts, so much so that the gods themselves supposedly partook. But there's a reason even modern archaeologists gag when they try to replicate the recipes. Still, it's safer than water, which is a pretty low bar. Historians still debate whether the average diet was as healthy as it seems from tomb paintings. Those bright scenes of baskets overflowing with figs, pomegranates, and roasted ducks, probably exaggerated. Artistic license. You've seen the markets. Unless you're rich or raiding a temple storeroom. Most of your meals come from the dirt and whatever didn't die in the sun first. You wander back toward the village center, spotting a boy gnawing on something red and sticky. A pomegranate. He offers you a few seeds. You pop them in your mouth, sweet tart full of life. A miracle. Then you bite down on something hard. A rock, no. A tiny stone mixed in with the fruit, probably from the grinding process. You spit it out and give up entirely on your teeth. Back at your lodging or well pile of reeds and regrets, you collapse rubbing your belly, which now feels both full and cursed. You think of modern kitchens, of food apps, of vitamin supplements and refrigeration and almond milk. Here you've eaten mostly things that hate your digestion or actively want to kill you. Still, there's something grounding about it. Everything you eat, you see made. Grown, baked, dried in the sun. There are no labels, no preservatives, no mystery ingredients. Just you, your shaky stomach, and the ever-present risk of parasites. Before the sun reaches its highest point, you lean against a wall, clutching your belly, wondering how ancient Egyptians managed this daily balancing act between nourishment and nausea. Maybe their guts were tougher, maybe they just didn't know any better. Or maybe they too lay awake at night thinking, please let that goat stew not have been cursed. Whatever the case, food here is fuel, sometimes poison, always a gamble. You close your eyes and whisper to no one in particular, next time, I'm just eating the locusts. You make it through another day barely. Your belly's stopped rebelling. Your skin has accepted its new itchy, sandpapery reality. And you're starting to grasp the daily rhythm of ancient Egypt. Just when you think you've earned a moment's peace, something happens to remind you where and who you are. You're not important here, not a noble, not a priest, not even a respected tradesperson. You're just another body in the background, utterly expendable. The realization hits hard when you're caught in a dispute. You accidentally bump into a merchant's cart, knocking over a basket of lentils. He yells. You apologize. But he's already dragging you to the local official, shouting about damages and theft. You stand in the square arms held by two guards, while the merchant spins a story so wildly exaggerated it could qualify as fiction. You try to explain. You didn't steal anything. You didn't even eat the lentils. But no one cares. You don't speak the dialect well enough, you don't have connections, and you certainly don't have enough silver to make this go away. The official glances at you like you're a stain. He mutters a sentence you don't fully understand, and suddenly you're being smacked across the back with a reed stick. Welcome to justice for the non-elite. Mainstream historical records tell us ancient Egypt had a complex legal system. They had laws, judges, written contracts. In theory, fairness was valued. Ma'at, the goddess of truth and balance, was central to their moral code. But let's be honest. That balance tipped heavily in favor of those with power. If you were poor, justice was a dice roll. And if you were an outsider, good luck. You're released after the beating, sore and embarrassed. No trial, no chance to plead. Just a reminder that in this world the pharaoh is God, the officials are his enforcers, and you are one misplaced lentil away from serious consequences. You limp away, feeling the full weight of the social hierarchy pressed down on your shoulders. It's everywhere in the food, the housing, even the way people move. Nobles ride past in litters, carried by servants. Priests walk with an aura of untouchability. You, on the other hand, step aside for everyone. Constantly. And don't even think about marrying up. Social mobility was possible, yes, but rare. You'd have to be a military hero, a brilliant scribe, or catch the eye of a particularly generous noblewoman. Right now, you smell like yesterday's sweat and goat stew. Not exactly desirable. You pass by a small temple where a trial is being reenacted. Two actors, one in white linen, the other in rags, stand before a statue of Osiris. It's symbolic, showing how even the dead must stand trial before the gods. Their heart weighed against the feather of Mayat. If the heart's heavier, it's fed to Ammit the devourer. You think of your own heart right now, pounding in your bruised chest, and wonder what it would weigh after today. Quirky tidbit, there's evidence that some trials were held in public plazas with judgment read aloud by scribes. But punishment swift and physical. Whippings, hard labor, sometimes even mutilation. Jails were rare. Mercy was rarer, especially if you couldn't bribe your way out. Historians still argue whether Egyptian society was more progressive than others of its time. Women had rights. Contracts were honored. But like anywhere else, the system favored those who already had power. And the bottom rung of society was often stepped on just to keep the structure upright. That night, lying on your mat of woven reeds, you run your fingers over the welts on your back. They're not deep, but they sting, a reminder of how quickly things spiral when you don't belong. You've started to understand that ancient Egypt isn't just old. It's unrelenting. Everyone has a place, and you're not allowed to move sideways, let alone up. As the stars wheel overhead, you recall a scene you passed earlier, a woman sobbing as her land was seized by tax collectors. They said she owed grain, even though the last flood ruined her fields. She protested. They ignored her. The grain was taken. Her child wailed in the background, too young to understand that their survival just slipped away in a burlap sack. No amount of eyeliner or crocodile dung can protect you from that kind of injustice. You sigh and roll onto your side, trying not to press your back against the mat. Maybe tomorrow will be better. Maybe you'll find work that doesn't get you flogged. Maybe you'll meet someone who sees you as more than a pair of borrowed sandals. But probably not. Because in ancient Egypt, being nobody is a full-time job. And the only promotion you're likely to get is being buried in a communal grave, if you're lucky. It's your 8th day in ancient Egypt, and your soul is starting to fray. You've been sunburned, bitten, beaten, and betrayed by food, water, and societal expectations. So naturally today you turn to religion. Maybe it can offer answers, or comfort, or at least a distraction from your mysteriously oozing bug bite. Spoiler, it offers answers, all right, just not the kind you can understand without a scribe, a priest, and a 1,000-page manual. You wake up to the sound of drums, low, rhythmic, and strangely hypnotic. A funeral procession is moving through the village. Mourners wail. Incense smokes. Priests chant in tones that make your skin crawl, partly from the mystery, partly from the lingering rash under your armpit. You follow the crowd toward the river, where a bark adorned with golden carvings waits to carry the soul of the deceased down the Nile. Religion in ancient Egypt isn't just about gods, it's everything. It's why the sun rises, why the flood comes, why your bread rose too much or not at all. Every insect bite could be a curse, every sneeze a divine message. There are gods for the sky, the earth, the river, the cats, the frogs, the ink, the beer, the makeup, and yes, even for digestion. And you, poor traveler, have offended most of them by accident. The temple looms before you, carved with enormous figures of Horus and Isis, their eyes wide and eternal. You step into its shade, the air suddenly cooler and heavy with incense. Inside, robed priests chant in perfect rhythm their movements, exact their voices, unwavering. You're awestruck and also slightly terrified. The rituals are complex, layered, and deliberately exclusive. Only priests and pharaohs can speak directly to the gods. The average person like you doesn't get a hotline to Ra. Your prayers go up through layers of intermediaries like the world's most intimidating customer service. Mainstream scholars agree Egyptian religion was state-run theater with divine stakes. Gods were appeased through offerings, bread, beer, meat, music. If they were happy, the Nile would flood just right. If not drought, famine, rebellion. And since the gods didn't send memos, you had to guess what they wanted based on omens, dreams, and the occasional baboon behavior. You pass a statue of Sekhmet, lion-headed and furious. She represents both healing and destruction. The priest explains she once tried to destroy all humanity, but was tricked into drinking dyed beer, thinking it was blood. She passed out drunk, and thus humanity survived. You nod slowly, unsure whether to laugh or kneel. Nearby, a family offers food to a statue of Bastet, the cat goddess. Their real cat watches from the shadows with mild disdain. It's probably also a priest. You learn quickly that being devout is a full-time job. There are daily offerings, purification rituals, special chants for different times of day, and specific ways to wrap amulets to protect your liver or your dreams. You see a man wearing an entire necklace of scarab beetle carvings, each symbolizing rebirth transformation or some other mysterious concept you're too tired to decode. You ask a priest how many gods exist. He smiles and says, "Enough." You press further. He gestures to a wall of carvings. There are over 80 distinct figures, and that's just the regulars. Local villages have their own obscure deities, like goddesses of scorpion stings or gods of drunken joy. You suddenly wonder if your rash is the result of offending some minor deity of toe fungus. Quirky fact: during major festivals, sacred statues were paraded down the Nile in grand barges. People danced, drank, and tossed flowers into the water. In the chaos, some claimed to receive visions. Others just fell overboard. Either way, religion wasn't always solemn. It could also be rowdy, confusing, and vaguely dangerous. Historians still argue whether the average Egyptian genuinely believed in all this, or simply went through the motions to avoid divine retribution. But belief here is more than faith, it's currency, protection, even identity. Without the right spells, your soul could get lost. Without the proper burial, your body could be desecrated. The stakes weren't just eternal. They were immediate. That night, as the temple doors close and the last of the chants echo away, you sit under the stars and wonder about your own beliefs. In your world, faith is often quiet, internal. Here it's loud, tangible, and everywhere. There are no atheists in a land where gods control the floodwaters and haunt the desert winds. You think of the weighing of the heart, the final test in the hall of two truths. Your heart placed on one side of a scale, the feather of Ma'at on the other. If your heart is heavy with lies or wickedness, Amit devours it, and you cease to exist. No second chance. No after-party in paradise. Just eternal nothingness. You look down at your dusty hands, your battered feet. You wonder how your heart would weigh tonight. You haven't stolen, haven't cursed the gods out loud. But you've thought some things, mostly about crocodile dung. As the moon rises over the river, its reflection dancing in the black water, you whisper a clumsy prayer, not because you believe, but because you're scared. Scared that somewhere some feather is already being pulled from a wing. Scared that some god with the head of a falcon or a beetle or a jackal is watching you fail to survive day by day. And scared that even the afterlife won't cut you a break. You wake up with a pounding headache and something oozing from your left nostril. It's probably fine. Probably. Still, it's becoming alarmingly clear that your body wasn't built for the ancient world. Your joints ache like you've aged 40 years in a week. Your eyes are bloodshot from dust and coal residue, and there's a weird bump on your ankle that's either a bite of boil or a punishment from a minor locust deity. Time to see a doctor. You ask around for a healer, and someone points you toward a mud brick house marked with a symbol that vaguely resembles a coiled snake. A middle-aged man greets you at the door wearing a robe that smells faintly of onions and myrrh. He doesn't introduce himself as a doctor. He's a Sunu, a practitioner of medicine, magic, and guesswork. And he looks entirely too excited to examine your boils. You sit on a mat while he pulls out a scroll. It's not a prescription pad, it's the Ebers Papyrus or something like it. This ancient medical manual lists hundreds of treatments, many of which start with the phrase, "You shall recite," followed by an incantation that sounds like someone choking on a scarab. You sit politely nodding as he waves incense over your head and mutters in a tone that suggests either healing or summoning. He finally leans in and inspects your rash. Definitely a heat demon, he says, then smears a paste made of honey, crushed herbs, and you think possibly lizard skin onto your shoulder. You're not reassured. Mainstream historians credit Egyptian medicine as surprisingly advanced for its time. They had surgical tools, understood anatomy from mummification, and even performed procedures like wound suturing. But alongside the science was a heavy dose of magic. Spells were part of almost every treatment, and bodily ailments were often linked to spiritual causes. You've got a headache, probably cursed by a jealous neighbor. Stomachache, that'll be the spirit of a disrespected fish. For a sore throat, the papyrus might suggest a mixture of goose fat, honey, and powdered ochre. For internal bleeding, maybe a warm mash of barley and prayer. For boils, you're out of luck, unless you enjoy being smeared with moldy bread and whispered to in ancient Egyptian. You try to explain your symptoms. He nods, strokes his chin, and prescribes a poultice made of dates beer foam and cow bile. You ask tentatively about the possibility of infection. He doesn't know the word, but he does offer to place a protective amulet around your neck. It's shaped like a frog. You say, "Thank you." Quirky side note, Egyptian physicians specialized. There were eye doctors, dentists, proctologists, yes, really. One ancient inscription even describes a shepherd of the anus. You suddenly feel very grateful your issues are skin deep today. Still, you're skeptical, so you ask if there's a second opinion available. He smiles and calls for his apprentice, a young boy who brings out a jar filled with some kind of medicinal wine. You drink it. It burns. You black out briefly. When you wake up, your rash is unchanged, but you no longer care. Historians still argue whether Egyptian medicine leaned more toward effective herbalism or elaborate placebo. Some treatments worked. Honey, for instance, really does have antibacterial properties. But others, like powdered mummy mixed with donkey hair, were more imaginative than curative. You leave the healer's house dazed, patched with something sticky, and slightly drunk on medicinal booze. The sun feels harsher than usual. Or maybe that's the cow bile talking. Either way, your body feels no better, and you've spent the day being poked, chanted at, and lectured on the evils of sneezing with your mouth open. As you limp back toward your shelter, you pass a woman rubbing crushed papyrus root on her baby's forehead. Another man is holding a snake and chanting into its mouth. A third is collecting Nile mud, placing it reverently into a jar and labeling it for divine balance. Clearly, you're not the only one in this society desperately hoping anything will work. You begin to understand that illness here is as much a spiritual crisis as a physical one. There's no germ theory, no antibiotics. You get sick, you either get lucky or you don't. You either please the gods or you rot quietly in a corner. Those who survive long enough to reach old age must have the immunity of a deity or the patience of one. That night, lying under a woven mat, your body wrapped in an odd mix of linen prayer beads and vague regret, you start coughing. Just once. Then again. A deep, dusty rattle from the lungs. You stare into the darkness and imagine your fate fever dehydration, another trip to the Sunu, and a slow fade into the afterlife. Maybe your heart will pass the weighing. Maybe your organs will be removed with care. Maybe you'll get a proper tomb, but probably you'll just be remembered as that weird outsider who couldn't handle a rash. You close your eyes, hoping for sleep, whispering your new daily mantra, "Please don't let the frog amulet fall off." You wake to a soft rustling near your foot. At first, you think it's the wind. Then it moves. Deliberately. Something scurries across your toes and disappears beneath a basket. You sit bolt upright, heartbeat pounding, only to find a fat black beetle sitting exactly where your face had been resting. Welcome to your new home, part shelter, part pest hotel. It's not a palace. It's barely a room. A patchwork of reeds, mud brick, and old cloth held together by gravity and wishful thinking. There's a mat, a jar of stagnant water, and a broken pot filled with what might have been lentils before they were colonized by ants. The walls are cracked, the roof leaks dust, and something is definitely nesting in the corner. This, you've been told, is typical housing for the average worker. Mud brick structures that bake in the sun and trap the heat like an angry oven. Ventilation optional. Privacy hilarious. You hear your neighbor snoring through the wall, followed by someone yelling about a goat in the grain bins. Every sound is public, every smell shared. You open the door, more of a curtain really, and immediately stub your toe on a stone. While hopping in pain, you nearly step on a snake. It's small, quick, and gone before you can scream. But your entire nervous system has now shut down for the day. Snakes are everywhere in Egypt. Cobras, vipers, harmless grass snakes, take your pick. The locals are oddly calm about it. One man even says they protect the house. You try not to laugh or cry. Mainstream scholars agree that homes in ancient Egypt were simple, efficient, and often communal. Extended families shared walls, courtyards, even cooking spaces. Floors were dirt or crushed limestone. The rich had painted plaster and garden pools. You have a termite buffet with a view of a dung pile. Still, people took pride in their homes. You see neighbors sweeping out front, lighting incense, painting murals of lotuses and gods. Children run barefoot, giggling, chasing cats and beetles. And those beetles sacred. The scarab represents rebirth and protection. You crushed one earlier with your elbow. Whoops! Inside, your attempts at domestic life are failing. You tried lighting a fire to boil water, but the wind blew it out, and now everything smells like singed goat hair. You tried mashing grain for flatbread, but your loaf resembles a burnt coin. You gave up on making a bed and now sleep on a stack of reed baskets, hoping the elevation keeps the rodents confused. Quirky detail: some homes kept cats not as pets exactly, but as divine pest control. Killing one even by accident could result in severe punishment, sometimes death. You eye a cat lounging in the doorway. It blinks slowly, judging you with ancient, immortal disdain. You bow slightly. Historians still argue whether the common homes offered real safety. Fire disease and structural collapse were frequent risks, especially during the flood season when rising Nile waters could turn entire villages into mushy, frog-infested lagoons. You try sweeping out your little space with a bundle of papyrus stalks. It just moves the dirt around. There's no soap, no scrub brush, no disinfectant. You wipe your hands on your tunic, which is now more bacteria than fabric. You sit. You swat a fly. You watch a spider crawl across the ceiling beam and pretend it's a blessing from a household god. The night creeps in again. Your shelter offers little defense from the cold now settling in. Yes, cold. The desert drops like a stone after sunset. Your linen wrap does nothing. You curl into yourself, trying to make peace with the crawling things, the dripping roof, and the overwhelming feeling that modern life was too good for you. Then you hear it. A soft skittering. Something gnawing. You lean over your pile of belongings and find a rat, smug and unhurried, chewing through the last of your grain. You shoo it away with a clay shard. It glances at you like you're the inconvenience. There's no pantry, no fridge, no locks. If you want to keep something safe, you sleep on it. Even then, snakes and rodents are clever. You make a mental note to build a shelf tomorrow if you can find wood or someone willing to trade a few nails for a lumpy flatbread and a half-rusted spoon. Eventually, exhaustion overtakes discomfort. You lie back, scratch at a fresh bite, and let the darkness settle. Somewhere nearby, a baby cries. A donkey brays. Someone coughs deep, dry, and repetitive. You think about your own home, the one you left behind. Climate control, insulated walls, a bathroom that didn't include a scorpion sighting. You wonder if you ever appreciated it. Then a beetle crawls over your leg, and you stop wondering anything at all. You whisper to yourself, "It's fine. It's character building." And then you laugh. Because even that sounds ridiculous now. You're jolted awake at dawn by the thud of a drum and the sharp bark of a command. Before your eyes even adjust to the light, someone's at your doorway, pointing and motioning with unmistakable urgency. You've been drafted. Not for war, at least not exactly, but for state service. You're not asked, not given time to pack, and definitely not told what this is about. You just follow because saying no isn't really on the table. Conscription in ancient Egypt was a regular part of life. The pharaoh, considered a living god, had absolute authority over the people. When labor was needed for royal projects, temples, canals, tombs, workers were pulled from villages like yours. Technically, you're donating your labor for the glory of the gods. In reality, you're about to spend the next few weeks or months hauling limestone and regretting every decision that led to this moment. You're marched with a group of equally tired, equally unprepared men toward a construction site just beyond the city's edge. The air is already heavy with dust, and the sound of hammers on stone rings out like a funeral rhythm. Overseers with sticks watch from shaded platforms, barking orders, and occasionally snapping their whips, not out of cruelty, they claim, but to maintain efficiency. You're pretty sure your blisters disagree. You're assigned to the hauling team. That means ropes and rocks, big ones. Dozens of workers line up along thick, braided ropes, pulling in unison to drag massive stone blocks across sledges. The desert sand, deceptively soft underfoot, becomes a furnace beneath you. your hands burn. Your shoulders scream. Your back, already fragile from fieldwork and terrible sleeping conditions, threatens to fold in half. You sweat through your linen wrap before the first hour is up. You start hallucinating by the second. By midday, someone faints, and the rest of you are told to keep moving. Time isn't measured here in hours, it's measured in completed blocks. You stop only when something is done or someone collapses for good. Mainstream historians have recently discovered graffiti left by workers on pyramid and temple walls. Some are surprisingly humorous: the drunkards of Menkaure, or the friends of Khufu's pyramid. These were work crews organized into teams with names and a sense of pride. But don't let that fool you into thinking this was a party. Pride didn't save your knees from cracking or your spine from grinding like millstones. You pause for water lukewarm thick and barely enough to wet your mouth. Then it's back to work. The overseer points to a pile of debris and hands you a crude shovel. Congratulations. You've been promoted to sand relocation specialist, which is a fancy way of saying you're now moving the same dirt over and over again because it keeps sliding back into the trench. During a short break, you sit next to a man who's worked on this site for weeks. His arms are the size of melons, his face like baked leather. You ask him how he handles it. He shrugs and says, "We're building for the gods." That's enough. You're too winded to argue. Quirky fact: in large projects, laborers were sometimes paid in beer and bread. The government rationed out meals and daily allowances. You get your first ration near sunset, a slab of bread that could double as a doorstop, and a cup of beer that tastes like someone washed their feet in a bowl of yeast. But it's food. And after today, you're in no position to be picky. Historians still argue whether workers were treated well or poorly. Some evidence suggests they lived in organized camps, had access to rudimentary medical care, even enjoyed music and entertainment at night. Others believe the harsh conditions, lack of freedom, and relentless sun amounted to a slow-motion punishment. You dragging your raw palms across another rope definitely feel more punished than pampered. Night falls and you're led to a crude shelter, nothing more than stone walls and a roof made from woven reeds. There are no beds, only dirt and the warmth of exhausted bodies. You collapse, muscles trembling, every joint humming with fatigue. You've never felt more broken. And yet, around you, people sing. Quietly, but sincerely. A worker hums a song to himself as he sharpens a tool. Someone shares a story about the overseer tripping over a goat. You catch yourself smiling just for a second before your shoulder spasms remind you to stop enjoying anything. You fall asleep mid-thought, curled against a block of stone that's somehow cooler than the air. In your dreams, you're back home. Not your modern home, but a version of it, one with smooth floors, cold water, soft chairs, and no ropes. But in the morning, the drum will sound again, and you'll rise limp to your station and pull, because that's how you survive. You pull, you haul, you endure. The gods are watching, or at least the overseers are. Same thing, really. You don't remember falling asleep, but you remember waking up flat on your back, staring at a ceiling so low you could touch it with your breath. Your mouth is dry. Your limbs don't move right. There's a strange buzzing in your ears that isn't a fly this time. Something's wrong. Very wrong. You're not at the work site. You're not in your little mud brick hut. You're lying on a stone slab. It's cold and the air smells faintly of myrrh resin and something coppery. Your head turns slowly, and the realization creeps in with the speed of a snake in sand. You're in a tomb, or a preparation room. And you, my friend, are the guest of honor. You've died. To be fair, it's not surprising. Dehydration, a possible infection from that bite, exhaustion from hauling limestone for days. Pick your poison. But death here is not the end. In ancient Egypt, it's just the start of a complicated second job. You hear voices low, rhythmic, purposeful. Priests. They're chanting over your body dressed in leopard skins, burning incense, gesturing with deliberate care. You're being embalmed, or at least prepared for it. Congratulations. You're now part of the most iconic, misunderstood process in ancient civilization mummification. You can't move, but you're weirdly aware. You feel hands working on your limbs, washing anointing wrapping. It's clinical, reverent, and horrifying. The ancient embalmers know what they're doing. They've done it hundreds of times. Your body is no longer yours. It's a vessel, and they're going to make it eternal. The first thing they remove is your brain. Not through the back of the skull, no, through the nose. A hooked tool is inserted, stirred around like a very determined barista, and then pulled back, bit by bit. You'd wince if you could, but you can't. You're not supposed to. Mainstream historians confirm the process after the brain is removed and the body is drained and dried using natron, a natural salt. Your insides are taken out, stomach, intestines, liver, lungs, each carefully placed into canopic jars, guarded by sons of Horus. You've probably seen them: jackal, baboon, falcon, and human-headed lids. Very stylish, very necessary. Except you weren't royalty. You weren't even middle class. So you're not getting the deluxe package. Your embalmers are working fast. No gold masks, no elaborate tomb paintings. Just enough to get you through the gates of the afterlife without offending Anubis too much. You recall the stories, your heart will be weighed. Not your accomplishments, not your Instagram followers, your heart. If it's heavier than the feather of Mayat, the goddess of truth, then the monstrous Amit, a crocodile-lion-hippo hybrid, will eat it, and your soul will vanish forever. No pressure. Quirky belief some people had: a heart scarab